to the rot and the corruption of Starmer's cronies being appointed to the civil service, all we have seen over the last 56 days is a Labour government of self-service, politics without principle. Earlier this week, we had the spectacle of a Labour Prime Minister standing in the Rose Garden of Downing Street, delivering one of the most feeble, pitiful and dishonest speeches you will ever hear. He was tough with the trade unions in pay negotiations. That was after he immediately rolled over to appease his paymasters at the expense of the British taxpayer. He was pitiful to claim that he is locking up criminals after spending years in Parliament voting against tougher prison sentences for violent criminals and sex offenders, and campaigning to block the deportation of dangerous foreign national offenders. My clear offer to our Conservative parliamentary colleagues is this: support me to be our next party leader, and I will lead you and support you to be the success we all want to see for our country and for our party. For my record of public service did not begin in May 2010 when I was elected Member of Parliament for Whittam, nor did it begin when I worked with William Hague to put the fire back in the belly of our party after 1997. It began more than 40 years ago, working in my parents' shop, serving customers on the shop floor, helping in a small family business at the heart of their local community, and being sent out on my bike by my father to deliver groceries and to check on regular customers who may not have been seen for a while. I am proud of the public service I gave 40 years ago, as I am of the public service I have given in one of the great offices of state. Now, I'm going to take a series of questions. Before we come to the press, I'm going to take some questions from our members, from our activists that have been submitted in advance. So can I start with Emily Hudson?
Hi, Priti.
Hi, Emily. Nice to see you.
Thank you for a really uplifting speech. I'm sure everyone can agree. I'd love to know your thoughts on Keir Starmer removing the portrait of Margaret Thatcher from Downing Street.
Emily, that's great. That's really thank you. Thank you for joining us today as well. On Keir Starmer, well, where should we start? 56 days in office, and he seems to be spending more time removing portraits of great, strong Conservative female leaders rather than getting on and doing the strong job of governance. And if he wants a picture to replace Margaret Thatcher, he can always have this one. But it does tell me... I think it tells us everything, really, about his priorities. His priorities are not on serving the country. His priorities are literally just about tinkering at the margins, hiding behind great portraits of great Conservative female prime ministers. That's why we need to get him out of office.
Yeah.
Rags Sandhu has another question. Hello, Rags.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm a councillor from the London Borough of Bexley. So thank you very much for mentioning our leader's name there earlier. Just a quick question to do with the Reform Party. Could you, as leader of our party, what tools are you prepared to give us to fight off, obviously, the Reform voters? When I mean fight off, I don't mean just the 5 of them in Parliament. I'm on about many thousands who obviously voted for them.
Well, let me just start by paying tribute to all our activists in the general election, not just those that are here, but across the country, because it was the most grueling general election campaign I've certainly fought in my lifetime as a Conservative activist. So reform are just one factor. There's no doubt about that. The reality is, Rags, we have to go back to being the true Conservative Party that we stopped being, effectively. We were trying to be all things to all people. And the key thing to all of this is that we do have to ensure that we always stand up for public values, the values of the country, the British people, and show that they're our compass, and that we're just not talking about sidebar issues that, consume the parliamentary party all the time. And I'm absolutely determined to ensure that we become that election-winning machine all over again, regardless who our political opponents are across the political spectrum, whether it's Reform, the Lib Dems, the Greens, because it varies across the country. We need to be out there being a champion for the British people and standing up for them and being an authentic Conservative Party. So I'm going to take some questions from the media, and first of all, I'm starting off with GB News. Chris Hope.
Yep. Okay.
Don't chop up.
Priti, Christopher Hope, GB News. You're seen as the most right-wing candidate of the 6 candidates to replace Rishi Sunak, you're proud of your grassroots Conservative base, but you won't apologise for record net migration under your government's watch. You didn't vote against the smoking ban when you had a chance to. How can you reconcile and win back reform voters from that position? And if you were Prime Minister, would you remove a portrait of Tony Blair?
Margaret Thatcher's going straight back on the rule. Let me just get that on the record first of all. Well, look, number one, I'm not going to play that game of soundbite politics. You've just heard me also give a speech about freedom and Conservative values and beliefs. And Chopper, when it comes to freedom, it's freedom as to how we live our lives. You've also seen what I've said in recent days around the smoking ban, what that is going to mean actually for businesses, for pubs, the hospitality sector. I think just before the general election, I was spending a lot of time with the hospitality sector, not just in my own constituency, but elsewhere. The other point just to say on this issue is that we've got a government that wants the police, the very people that should be policing our streets, to be policing beer gardens and things of that nature. In my view, we need the police on the streets, not in beer gardens. They need to be doing their job. And, this is exactly where we need to unpick this awful Labour government. BBC, Harry?
Thank you. Harry Farley from BBC News. You talk about losing the confidence of the British people. Do you recognise your own role in that, given that as Home Secretary, immigration did skyrocket and hit record figures?
So, Harry, first of all, let me be very, very clear with you and the public. On my watch, from 2019 onwards, we delivered the structural reforms to the immigration and asylum system. That was the introduction of a points-based immigration system, which effectively means that the government of the day has the levers to control who comes into our country and who does not come into our country, and that includes numbers. So if we want to get into the politics of sound bites and just giving out spurious numbers without any context, let me just put some context to everybody here and at home. Are we now saying that those NHS workers that came here during the pandemic were not welcome and that we should be sending them back? Are we saying that we were insincere to the people that came from Hong Kong, the BNOs and the Ukrainians when war in Europe took place? That is certainly not the Conservative Party that I represent. And I think when it comes to immigration, context does matter. It is far too simple, far too lazy to just speak about numbers without that context. Sky News, Darren.
First of all, there's been an awful lot of focus on reform, but what about the Lib Dems? They won dozens of seats from the Conservative Party. What's your message to those Conservative voters who switched to the Liberal Democrats this time? And second of all, I noticed there weren't any kind of policies in your speech. If you had one eye-catching policy to sum up your campaign, what would it be?
So I think, first of all, we have to become a party that broadens our appeal and touches parts of the country where people left us. In fact, I actually think that we moved away from huge swathes of the British people. And that is because of our performance, our conduct over the last 2 years, shenanigans that took place in Westminster, and the standards that fell very low. So recognising that is incredibly important. But we have to go back to being champions of the issues that matter to people every single day. Because, Darren, speaking about sidebar issues that just consume, a group of MPs in Westminster will not pay people's taxes, will not give them the economic security that they absolutely want and deserve for them and their families. And that's at the heart. That is absolutely at the heart of not just my campaign, who I am as a Conservative, but where we should be as a Conservative party. So you've asked about policies. It's not just about eye-catching policies. It's about policies that are true to who we are. Policies that mean something to people, not soundbites. And of course, that has to be the long-term economic security for the British people. That is crucial. It is for them, it's for their families, and it's not what we're about to see under Starmer's government. Basically, inflation busting pay increases for his trade union friends, for the way in which he's conducting himself and bringing standards in public life down to a new low. We have to be literally where the British people are. And I can say this to all of you now, the British people are where my compass is, and that's where we need to be as a party.